In this video, you're going to learn exactly how to write a powerful introduction for your nonfiction book. Now, the best way to do that is to actually study a great introduction. You can study writing all you want from a theoretical perspective, and it's great to learn some things, but you need to actually look at great writing to really understand. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to walk you through the introduction of the book 21 Lessons for the 21st Century by Yuval Noah Harari, which was a best-selling book, and it has a great introduction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through this introduction. I'm going to tell you what it's doing really well and how you can apply that to your own book. Now, this video is going to be helpful for you if you're writing a nonfiction book. So whether that be a business book, a personal development book, maybe something philosophical, something historical, all of these, this will apply. Now, if you're writing something else like fiction, obviously that doesn't apply because the type of introduction is very different. So if you're writing any of these types of books, this is for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the introduction, tell you what it's doing well, and how to use that. So the thing is, when you study introductions, you can really see what's happening by first skimming through the first sentences of every paragraph. So every paragraph in a book, in a chapter, contains one main idea. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to walk you through certain paragraphs. We're not going to read the whole thing. We're going to look at what is happening in this introduction, read some passages. So the first sentence is, "In a world deluged by irrelevant information, clarity is power." So it's starting with a strong statement, which we like. And then it goes on to say, in theory, anybody can join the debate about the future of humanity, but it is so hard to maintain a clear vision. So what the author is doing here in this introduction is it is exposing the problem. That problem is clarity. Clarity of thinking, clarity of insight, clarity of conversation. So right off the bat, we have a clear problem, a clear problem about history, about society. Then he goes on and expands on that. Frequently, we don't even notice that a debate is going on or what the key questions are. Billions of us can hardly afford the luxury of investigating because we have more pressing things to do. We have to go to work, take care of the kids, or look after elderly parents. Unfortunately, history gives no discounts. If the future of humanity is decided in your absence because you are too busy feeding and clothing your kids, you and they will not be exempt from the consequences. This is very unfair, but who said history was unfair? So this is a great exposition of what the problem is. The problem is that history happens and we have to have clarity. We lack that clarity. That's what the author is saying. Then in the next paragraph, he talks a little bit about himself and what he's trying to achieve or what he can contribute to this conversation. As a historian, I cannot give people full or close, but I can try and offer some clarity, thereby helping to level the global playing field. So this is a little bit about himself. Then he talks about his first book, Sapiens, and what it did. Then he talks about his second book that did something else. And then in this book, I want to zoom on the here and now. So the two other books were about the past. One of them was about the past. The other one was about the future. So he's alluding to his body of work that he's building, that this book is part of it. So what he's doing here really is he's locating his book in his body of work. Now, he's doing that because he has written other books. However, if you haven't written other books, you may locate this book within your larger work as a professional or as a business person or as a public figure. So then he says what he's doing in this book. In this book, I want to zoom in on the here and now. My focus is on current affairs and on the immediate future of human societies. What is happening right now? What are today's greatest challenges and choices? What should we pay attention to? What should we teach our kids? So here he's using a lot of direct questions, which is great. He's exposing the questions that he's going to be answering in this book. Now, here he's making a caveat. Of course, 7 billion people have 7 billion agendas, And as already noted, thinking about the big picture is a relatively rare luxury. Talks about this, the fact that we have all different agendas. He talks about his agenda. My agenda here is global. I look at the major forces that shape societies all over the world and that are likely to influence the future of our planet as a whole. Here's a little bit detail here. He keeps talking about what he's doing with this book. So reality is composed of many threads, and this book tries to cover different aspects of our global predicament without claiming to be exhaustive. Here's doing a little caveat. When you are writing a book, you have a certain scope, you have a certain lens. You don't want to do everything, because if you do everything, you are bound to be wrong and people will come after you intellectually. And so he's putting this caveat as to what he's trying to do, but he's saying, I'm not trying to be exhaustive here. Then he talks about a little bit, so this was more like the what of the book. Now he talks about the how. The book was actually written in conversation with the public. Many of the chapters were composed in response to questions I was asked by readers, journalists, and colleagues. Earlier versions of some segments were already published in different forms, which gave me the opportunity to receive feedback and hone my arguments. This is all about the how. Here he's asking more questions. What does the rise of Donald Trump signify? What can we do about the epidemic of fake news? Why is liberal democracy in crisis? Is God back? These are all questions that he's, asking in this book, or that he's alluding to. Another caveat, there are a lot of caveats in this introduction, which is very important. You want to set what you are doing in the book. The introduction, the goal of the introduction is to actually tell what you're going to be doing. So though this book takes a global perspective, I do not neglect the personal level. On the contrary, I want to emphasize the connections between the great revolutions of our era and the internal lives of individuals. He goes on about this. Now, later in this introduction, if we move on to this paragraph where it says the book begins by surveying the current political and technological predicament. Here he's going even more in depth. So one of the things that you will want to do in an introduction is set the expectations and create a pathway for your readers to know what's going to be happening. This is one of the things that you will want to do. Now, he does that in a little bit of a, not disjointed, but you'll see here, he talks again about his other book, his previous book, Homo Deus. So he's cutting that. But if you go again, you'll see later in the third part of the book, we see that through the technological challenges, the fourth part, the fifth part. So here he's basically, he's saying exactly what's going to be happening in the book. He's outlining the different sections. Here he says, this may sound overambitious, but Homo sapiens cannot wait. Philosophy, religion, and science are all running out of time. Here in this paragraph, what he's doing is creating urgency and relevance for his book. He's saying this is why this book is important. This is why you should be reading this book, which is a tremendously important aspect of your introduction. You need to create the relevance, or you need to show the relevance of your book. You need to create the urgency. You need to create excitement for people to read this book. So he's doing that. He's saying he's basically saying this is, all of this stuff is existential. We're facing existential threats. We need to have this conversation. That's what the author is saying here. Here in the final chapter, this is the end of his outline of the different parts. Here he says, before embarking on this intellectual journey, I would like to highlight one crucial point. Much of the book discusses the shortcomings of the liberal worldview in the democratic system. I do so not because I believe liberal democracy is uniquely problematic, but rather because I think it is the most successful and most versatile political model humans have so far developed for dealing with the challenges of the modern world. So I'm not gonna read you this whole thing, but he's saying I'm criticizing this philosophy, this political model, but it's not necessarily because I wanted guns. So, and then he talks about how he had a difficult choice to make, which was either speak freely or censor himself and run the risk that people are going to misinterpret what he's saying. He said he made the decision of writing freely, saying what is on his mind. And at the end he says, but please note that this book, he says, after some soul searching, I chose free discussion over self-censorship. Without criticizing the liberal model, we cannot repair its faults or go beyond it. But please note that this book could have been written only when people are still relatively free to think what they like and to express themselves as they wish. If you value this book, you should also value freedom of expression. So it's a very interesting caveat, because especially when you deal with philosophical or political aspects, you want to make sure that people understand where you're coming from. So he's talking about liberal democracy and, what the general Western system. He's saying I have to, doesn't mean I don't think it has value, which I think it's an important thing to say if you want to be understood. So what you see in this introduction is essentially there is there's who the author is, there's why this is all important, what the book is about, how this book is divided. There are a lot of caveats, there's some warnings, and essentially we get a really good understanding of where the author is coming from as a person and as an author. We have some mentions of his past books, so we understand his body of work, and we have a reasonable expectation of what's coming in this book. So the introduction, when you write it, you basically want to show this: the what, the who, the why, the how, and the larger picture. So that introduction does that very well, because now we know a little bit about the author, we know what the book's about, we know what we're going to be learning, we know where the author's coming from, we know that he's dealing with certain issues. He's made clear that, this is complicated. I'm saying things that doesn't necessarily mean like this is like black and white thinking. So this is a great introduction here. So if you want to write the introduction to your nonfiction book, what I recommend is you read some other introductions. Just go to your bookshelf, pick up some nonfiction books, read the introduction, and analyze the content, like what I just did. Basically, you can watch this video again if you want, really understand, the questions that are being answered, because this is really what this is about. There are questions being answered in the introduction. If I could put it as simply as possible, the introduction is there to answer these basic questions. Who is the author? What is the book about? Why is the book important? How is this book divided? Etc., etc. So these are the things that you want to answer in your introduction. Read more introductions to really get a sense of that and see the writing style. And then if you need help, if you're writing a book and you need help, whether it be to write the introduction, whether it be to write the full book, or you need some advice and guidance, you can book a consultation call with me. I offer coaching and consulting services, so you can take advantage of that if you have a need. I'm going to put a link in the comments, a link that goes to my calendar. You can book a free initial conversation. It's just a 15-minute conversation. You can see what you need help with. And then if there's a need, you can decide to work with me. So I hope that this video was helpful for you. I hope that you understand a little better how to write the introduction of a nonfiction book. You have just seen a great example from a very compelling author, somebody who's had a lot of success. Remember, the introduction is the first thing that people are going to read. It's going to help them make a decision. Oftentimes people go to the bookstore, they open the book, they look at the cover, then they look at the blurb in the back, and then they start reading the introduction. So that helps them make a decision. So you have to make sure it's good. You have to make sure it answers all the questions that it needs to answer. Thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please like it. Please subscribe to this channel. You'll be notified every time I publish a new video on here, and share it with anybody who might need this information. Thank you. Bye-bye.